In topic 7.6, we're going to talk about different types of approaches to controlling air pollution emissions. So we know that air pollution is emitted by industries, by power plants, by vehicles as well. And so to reduce the amount of air pollution being released by these various devices, we have a variety of things that can happen. So one is controlling the quality of the source fuel. And that means burning cleaner fuels will result in less air pollution. Another is to install certain types of pollution control technology that remove some of the pollutants from the waste gas that's being released. And so you have different ways of doing that, and we'll talk about some of those. So there are some devices that are used to control particulate matter. We could see some of those, cyclone separators, wet collectors, and scrubbers, fabric filters. Those are things that can reduce the particulate matter that's being emitted. There's also control devices, pollution control devices that remove gaseous waste like nitrogen oxides and sulfur oxides, or wet and dry scrubbers are an example of that. And we know that oftentimes governments can put in certain rules and regulations that require industries to install some of these pieces of equipment so that they can reduce their emissions. And so to reduce those air pollutants, one idea to consider is energy conservation. So if we can conserve energy and be more efficient in our use of some of these fuels, then that's going to lead to a reduction in the air pollution that's released. Using alternative fuels, cleaner fuels, and using technology and regulation, all of those things can help to reduce air pollution. And we can see here, if we look at this graph on the left, we know that coal comes in a variety of forms, and some of those forms are high in sulfur and release a lot of sulfur oxides when burned. Other types of coal are have less sulfur in them. And so when we look at what's available, we can see this graph shows that the coal that's available in the western part of the United States is low sulfur coal. The coal that's available in Appalachia now is more of the high sulfur coal. So which types of coal that we use will have a big impact on the emissions of some of these pollutants. There's also these pieces of technology which can reduce many of these air pollutants. And one you might be familiar with are catalytic converters. Catalytic converters are by law on all motor vehicles sold today. That wasn't always the case. But a catalytic converter is basically a piece of equipment in the exhaust system of a car, and it's in internal combustion engine vehicles. And what happens is the exhaust gas from the engine contains hydrocarbons, it contains carbon monoxide, it contains nitrogen oxides, and that exhaust gas goes through this device, the catalytic converter, which, because of various metals and compounds that are inside of the catalytic converter, it converts some of those pollutants into less harmful substances. It doesn't remove them, but it converts them. For example, it produces, after that exhaust gas comes out of the tailpipe, after it's been through the catalytic converter, the byproducts are nitrogen gas, N2, which is inert, carbon dioxide, and also water. And so the result of installing catalytic converters and requiring catalytic converters was a reduction in the tailpipe emissions from motor vehicles. And so that's what a catalytic converter does. If you go to a gas station, you might see that in some gas stations, the gas pump has a special nozzle on it. You can see it here. This is a vapor recovery nozzle, and this reduces the VOCs that are emitted when you fuel up a tank of gas. And so that's another piece of technology. In industrial and power plant settings, we have other types of pollution control technologies. We have just basically fabric filters, almost like a coffee filter but made of fabric, that are used that filter out particulate matter. So you have the exhaust gas shown here, coming in, and then you have these bags where the exhaust air goes through, and it basically just filters out many of the particulates that might be present, and then they are released through the filter. Another example is a fluidized bed reactor, which is when you take and you add material like limestone to the fuel that's being burned, and by adding that along with this technology, that can significantly reduce the SOx and NOx emissions from the burning of these fuel sources. So that's called fluidized bed reactor. It uses limestone. And then you can remove the sulfur and nitrogen compounds. It comes out in the ash that's released. We also have scrubbers and electrostatic precipitators are two other types of technology that are used. A scrubber uses there's wet and dry scrubbers, but this is an example. This is the exhaust gas coming in to this wet scrubber in this case. And as that air rises through this piece of equipment, a mist of fluid is sprayed at it. And as that fluid is sprayed, it picks up some of the particulates and some of the sulfur and nitrogen gases, so that the exhaust gas that comes out of the scrubber is much cleaner than the air that would have been released otherwise. So this is an example of a wet scrubber. And then we also have an electrostatic precipitator. This is a piece of equipment that removes particulate matter. So typically, as the gas moves through the electrostatic precipitator, an electrical charge is administered to metal plates. And as the particulate matter comes through, it is charged negatively through these metal rods. And as it goes past the plates, which have had the electrical charge, they are positively charged. And so the particulate matter gets attracted and then settles out. So the outgoing gas that's released is much cleaner in terms of particulate matter.